Baby T-Rex stuck in quicksand. Then a velociraptor makes a shocking move. How will this beautiful story unfold? To find out, watch the video to the end. But first, please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to get more stories like this. The humid air hung thick over the prehistoric forest, with every sound amplified in the eerie stillness. Birds chirped high above the towering ferns, and the occasional rustling of leaves hinted at unseen predators lurking in the shadows. In the heart of the jungle, a baby Tyrannosaurus Rex stumbled along a muddy path, its tiny, clawed feet sinking slightly into the soft ground. This baby, named Koro by the pack that recently abandoned him, was an anomaly. Unlike his siblings, who grew fast and strong, Koro was smaller, slower, and clumsy. Traits that spelled doom in a world where survival meant being the fiercest. His family had moved on, leaving him to fend for himself. Yet, the young T-Rex hadn't given up. He had ventured further from his birthplace, searching for food, water, and safety. Koro's keen nose twitched, picking up a scent that promised relief. A small waterhole not far ahead. The glimmer of hope spurred him on, and his short, stubby legs carried him closer to the enticing smell. He reached the edge of the clearing and saw it, a shallow pool glistening in the filtered sunlight. Parched from hours of wandering, Koro raced toward the water, his tiny roars echoing through the jungle. But as his first step broke the muddy surface of the pool's edge, a terrible realization struck. His feet didn't find solid ground, they sank. The earth beneath him wasn't stable but a trap. Quicksand. Panic set in as Koro thrashed, his claws digging into the soft mud. The more he struggled, the deeper he sank, his cries for help piercing through the thick air. Little did Koro know, his desperate wails reached the ears of a creature he never expected to encounter. From the shadows, a pair of watchful eyes observed the scene with calculating precision. A velociraptor, lean and scarred from countless battles, emerged from the underbrush. Her name was Lyra, a loner who had survived not by brute force but by cunning and strategy. She had been tracking Koro for hours, drawn by the scent of an easy meal. A young T-Rex would have been a formidable foe under normal circumstances, but here, stuck and vulnerable, he was perfect prey. Lyra crept closer, her sharp claws clicking softly against the stones as she moved. The sight of the struggling T-Rex was tantalizing. Her hunger gnawed at her insides. Yet, as she approached the edge of the quicksand, something gave her pause. Koro's cries weren't the deep, threatening roars of an adult predator, but the helpless calls of a frightened child. Lyra tilted her head, her instincts battling her intelligence. For years, she had only looked out for herself, taking any chance she could to survive. But now, as she stood on the edge of the pit, something stirred deep within her. A faint, almost forgotten sense of empathy. Lyra hesitated, then took a cautious step closer, lowering her head to observe the baby's terrified eyes. Koro's thrashing slowed as he noticed the velociraptor. His fear of the quicksand was momentarily replaced by a new terror. This sleek predator would surely end him. But instead of pouncing, Lyra did something extraordinary. She began to circle the pit, her sharp eyes scanning the edges of the quicksand. It seemed she wasn't there to harm him after all. Lyra continued to circle the edge of the quicksand, her keen eyes analyzing the situation. Koro, still half sunken in the pit, froze his movements as much as he could, his chest heaving with exhaustion. His wide, panicked eyes followed her every step, unsure whether to interpret her actions as help or hostility. The velociraptor was no stranger to danger, and the quicksand was a death trap she had seen claim many creatures before. To step too close meant risking her own life, something she had carefully avoided during her years of survival. Yet, something about the baby T-Rex's helplessness gnawed at her instincts. She couldn't walk away, not this time. She let out a low grunt, trying to assess whether Koro understood. The baby's claws still scrabbled weakly at the mud, and his head tilted slightly at her sound, as though trying to decipher her intention. Lyra snorted softly, pacing closer, careful to test the ground with every step. She knew that if she made one wrong move, she would join the baby in his plight. Koro whimpered, his body sinking another inch into the pit. The quicksand was relentless, pulling him down with every passing second. It wasn't just the physical struggle that exhausted him. It was the overwhelming terror. Lyra, sensing his growing fatigue, realized she needed to act fast. But how? Her sharp eyes darted around the clearing. The jungle was rich with resources if one knew how to use them. Lyra spotted a cluster of vines hanging from a low tree branch nearby. With a determined grunt, she darted toward them, leaping gracefully onto the trunk and using her claws to slice through the thick vines. They fell to the ground in tangled heaps, and Lyra wasted no time dragging them toward the edge of the quicksand. Koro watched her with a mixture of confusion and faint hope. The Velociraptor's movements were deliberate, almost calculated. She wasn't attacking, she was working. His young mind struggled to comprehend why a predator like her would help someone like him. Lyra carefully arranged the vines, knotting them together with surprising dexterity. Her claws and teeth worked quickly, weaving the strands into a makeshift rope. It wasn't perfect, but it was sturdy enough to hold weight. Once satisfied, she anchored one end of the vine to a tree trunk, using her full strength to tug and test its stability. With the rope secured, Lyra turned her attention back to Koro. She let out a sharp bark-like sound, trying to catch his focus. The baby's wide eyes locked onto hers, and she gave a low growl of encouragement. Slowly, she nudged the other end of the vine toward the edge of the pit, making sure it was within his reach. Koro hesitated, his small claws twitching in the mud. He didn't understand her plan, but he sensed her urgency. Summoning the last of his strength, he stretched his neck forward, his tiny teeth managing to clamp onto the vine. Lyra let out a soft hiss of approval. Good, her instincts seemed to say. Now hold on. Bracing herself, Lyra wrapped her claws around the anchored end of the vine and began to pull. Her muscles strained as she dug her feet into the dirt, her sharp claws anchoring her in place. It was a slow process. The quicksand resisted every inch of progress. Koro's small frame barely budged at first, his body weighed down by the thick mud. But Lyra didn't give up. She pulled again and again, her breaths coming in short, sharp bursts. Each tug brought Koro closer to the edge, his body gradually emerging from the pit. Mud clung to his scales, and his tiny roars of effort echoed through the clearing. The moment Koro's front claws found solid ground, his instincts kicked in. He scrambled forward, using every ounce of strength to crawl toward safety. Lyra gave one final, powerful pull, and with a wet, squelching sound, Koro tumbled free of the quicksand. He lay sprawled on the ground, his chest heaving as he gulped in air. For a moment, neither he nor Lyra moved. The Velociraptor stood a short distance away, her body tense, ready to retreat if the baby turned aggressive. But Koro didn't lash out. Instead, he lifted his head weakly and looked at her, a soft, almost questioning sound escaping his throat. Lyra tilted her head, observing him with a mix of curiosity and relief. She could have left now. The baby T-Rex was safe, and her unusual act of compassion was complete. But something held her there, a strange, unspoken bond that had formed in the midst of danger. Koro, still exhausted, took a tentative step toward her. His small frame wobbled, and he stumbled slightly before regaining his balance. Lyra didn't move, her sharp eyes fixed on him. Slowly, the baby nudged his snout toward her side, a timid gesture of gratitude. The Velociraptor's initial reaction was to flinch, but she stopped herself. She let the baby rest his snout against her for a moment before stepping back. Her instincts told her to keep her guard up. Trust wasn't something she gave freely. But the vulnerability in Koro's eyes reminded her of something she hadn't felt in a long time: connection. Before either of them could react further, the jungle erupted with a series of distant roars. Lyra's head snapped up, her body going rigid. She recognized the sound immediately. It was a pack of predators, likely drawn by the noise of Koro's struggle. They were close and they were coming fast. Koro whimpered, pressing himself closer to Lyra's side. The Velociraptor snarled softly, her sharp claws digging into the dirt as she assessed their options. She could abandon the baby and escape. Her speed and agility would give her a good chance of outrunning the pack. But as she glanced down at Koro's trembling form, she knew she couldn't leave him behind. Lyra nudged the baby, urging him to move. "We have to go," her actions seemed to say. Koro hesitated, but the urgency in her movements spurred him into action. Together, they bolted into the dense jungle, Lyra leading the way with Koro stumbling close behind. The roars grew louder, the ground trembling with the approach of heavy footsteps. Lyra pushed herself harder, weaving through the underbrush with precision. She glanced back occasionally, ensuring Koro was still following. Despite his exhaustion, the baby T-Rex kept up, his determination matching her own. The chase led them deeper into the jungle, where the vegetation grew thicker and the paths more treacherous. Lyra's sharp senses guided her, her mind racing to find a safe haven. She spotted a narrow ravine up ahead, its steep walls providing a potential refuge. Without hesitation, she darted toward it, Koro following her lead. As they reached the ravine, Lyra leapt gracefully onto a rocky ledge, turning to help Koro scramble up. The baby struggled at first, his small claws scraping against the stone. Lyra reached down, her powerful jaws carefully gripping his scruff. With a swift motion, she hauled him onto the ledge, both of them collapsing in a heap. The pack of predators burst into the clearing moments later, their snarls echoing through the jungle. Lyra pressed herself flat against the rocky wall, her body shielding Koro from view. The predators sniffed the air, their sharp eyes scanning the area. But the narrow ravine provided enough cover to keep Lyra and Koro hidden. The pack lingered for several tense minutes, their growls filling the air. Lyra's muscles remained coiled, ready to fight if necessary. Koro huddled close to her, his small frame trembling with fear. Finally, the predators lost interest, their footsteps fading into the distance. Lyra let out a slow breath, her body relaxing slightly. Koro looked up at her, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and gratitude. For the first time since they had crossed paths, the baby T-Rex felt safe. The Velociraptor settled onto the ledge, her sharp eyes scanning the jungle for any signs of danger. Koro curled up beside her, his tiny body pressing against her for warmth. In that moment, predator and prey became something more, unlikely allies in a world where survival was the only rule. The jungle was eerily silent after the pack of predators left, the only sound being the rustle of leaves swaying gently in the breeze. Lyra sat motionless, her sharp gaze sweeping the terrain below as Koro rested by her side. The baby T-Rex was still trembling slightly, but his breathing had steadied, and a faint calmness was beginning to settle over him. Lyra had spent years surviving alone, honing her instincts to stay alive in a world that was both unforgiving and brutal. Yet, sitting there with Koro, she felt a strange stirring within her. A faint, long-forgotten memory of companionship, of having others to protect. She had lost her own pack long ago, and though she had grown accustomed to solitude, there was something about the baby's presence that felt different. Koro let out a soft grunt, nudging Lyra's flank with his small snout. He wasn't seeking food or comfort, he was seeking connection. Lyra tilted her head, letting out a low, guttural sound in response, a noise that wasn't hostile but almost soothing. The baby chirped softly, his fear dissipating with each passing moment. The Velociraptor shifted her focus to the jungle again. They couldn't stay in the ravine forever. The predators might circle back, and the dense jungle offered countless dangers. Lyra knew they needed to keep moving. She nudged Koro gently with her snout, urging him to stand. He hesitated, his small limbs still unsteady from exhaustion, but the determination in Lyra's movements spurred him to his feet. Carefully, Lyra led him along the edge of the ravine, her movements deliberate and cautious. The terrain was uneven, littered with loose rocks and tangled roots, but her sharp instincts guided her, and Koro followed as closely as his small legs would allow. The jungle ahead opened into a glade, the sunlight streaming through the canopy and illuminating a small stream that trickled through the clearing. Lyra paused by the stream, her eyes scanning the surroundings for any signs of danger. Satisfied that the area was safe, for now, she stepped forward and began drinking from the cool, clear water. Koro watched her for a moment before following suit, his small snout dipping into the stream. The water soothed his parched throat, and for the first time since his ordeal in the quicksand, he felt a glimmer of relief. As they rested by the stream, a new challenge presented itself. Koro's stomach let out a loud, rumbling growl. The baby whined softly, pawing at the ground in frustration. Lyra watched him, her sharp mind quickly piecing together what he needed: food. But finding suitable food for a young T-Rex was no easy task. Lyra's own diet consisted of small prey, insects, and the occasional scavenged carcass, things that suited her size and agility. But Koro needed something more substantial. She couldn't simply leave him to hunt for himself. He was too young, too inexperienced. With a low growl, Lyra rose to her feet, signaling for Koro to stay put by the stream. The baby let out a soft chirp of protest, but Lyra silenced him with a sharp glance. Her presence had already given him enough reassurance to trust her, and he reluctantly curled up by the water's edge, watching as she disappeared into the underbrush. Lyra's hunt was swift and efficient. Her sharp claws and teeth made her a formidable predator, and her knowledge of the jungle allowed her to track and ambush prey with precision. Within minutes, she returned to the stream, dragging the carcass of a small dinosaur behind her. It wasn't much, but it would be enough to sustain Koro for now. The baby's eyes lit up at the sight of the food, his hunger momentarily overriding his fear. Lyra tore off small pieces of meat with her claws, nudging them toward Koro. He hesitated at first, unsure whether to trust the offering, but the growling in his stomach soon convinced him. He gobbled up the meat eagerly, his small jaws snapping with newfound energy. As Koro ate, Lyra kept watch, her eyes scanning the jungle for any signs of danger. The act of feeding him felt foreign yet strangely fulfilling. She had spent so long surviving on her own, caring for no one but herself. Yet here she was, ensuring the survival of a creature she would have once viewed as a rival or even prey. Once Koro had eaten his fill, his energy returned, and he began to explore the clearing with cautious curiosity. He sniffed at the plants, his small claws pawing at the soft earth. Lyra followed him closely, her protective instincts growing stronger with each passing moment. The baby's clumsy movements and wide-eyed wonder reminded her of a time long ago when she, too, had been young and vulnerable. Their peace was short-lived. A distant roar echoed through the jungle, deep and guttural. Lyra froze, her body going rigid. She recognized the sound immediately. It was the call of an adult T-Rex. Koro perked up at the noise, his small body trembling with both excitement and fear. The roar came again, closer this time. Lyra's mind raced. Was this Koro's parent, searching for its lost offspring? Or was it another predator, drawn by the scent of fresh prey? She didn't have time to find out. Her priority was to protect Koro, and the approaching T-Rex posed a threat she couldn't ignore. She nudged the baby, urging him to move. Koro chirped in protest, reluctant to leave the clearing, but Lyra's urgency left him no choice. Together, they darted back into the jungle, the shadows of the trees swallowing them whole. The roars grew louder, the ground trembling with the approach of heavy footsteps. Lyra pushed herself to move faster, her sharp senses guiding her through the dense foliage. Koro struggled to keep up, his small legs no match for her agility, but he followed her without hesitation. As they ran, the jungle seemed to close in around them, the trees and underbrush growing thicker and more tangled. Lyra's sharp claws slashed through the foliage, clearing a path for Koro. The baby stumbled and fell several times, but each time he got back up, driven by the instinct to survive. Finally, they emerged into a rocky canyon, its high walls offering a brief respite from the relentless pursuit. Lyra scanned the area, her keen eyes searching for a place to hide. She spotted a narrow crevice in the canyon wall, just wide enough for Koro to fit through. She nudged the baby toward the crevice, letting out a sharp growl of encouragement. Koro hesitated, his wide eyes filled with fear, but Lyra's unwavering presence gave him the courage to move. He squeezed into the crevice, his small body disappearing into the shadows. Lyra remained outside, her body coiled and ready for a fight. The T-Rex's roars echoed through the canyon, growing louder with each passing moment. The ground trembled beneath her feet, and the air was thick with tension. When the massive predator finally appeared, its golden eyes locked onto Lyra with a mix of curiosity and menace. The Velociraptor stood her ground, her sharp claws glinting in the sunlight. She knew she couldn't defeat the T-Rex in a fight, but she was willing to risk everything to protect Koro. The massive T-Rex lowered its head, its golden eyes narrowing as it sniffed the air. It could smell the faint traces of fresh meat left in the clearing and the lingering scent of the baby T-Rex. Lyra stood her ground, her sharp claws digging into the dirt as she let out a low, guttural growl. She was smaller, faster, and far less powerful, but she had one clear advantage: the terrain. The crevice behind her was narrow, far too tight for the T-Rex to reach through. It would protect Koro from being spotted, but it also meant Lyra had no escape. Her heart raced as the predator's heavy footsteps drew closer, the vibrations shaking the rocks around her. This was a fight she couldn't win outright, but she wasn't ready to back down. The T-Rex stopped just feet away, towering over the much smaller Velociraptor. Its enormous head tilted slightly, studying her with a mixture of confusion and hostility. To the larger dinosaur, Lyra's defiance was puzzling. She wasn't protecting her own kind, nor was she guarding a nest. Yet there she stood, unyielding and fierce. The baby T-Rex let out a soft chirp from within the crevice, a sound so faint it was almost lost in the tense silence. But the T-Rex heard it. Its massive head turned sharply toward the crevice, its nostrils flaring as it picked up the scent. Lyra reacted immediately, leaping forward and letting out a piercing screech to divert its attention. Her sharp claws slashed through the air, catching the T-Rex on its snout. The larger predator roared in fury, shaking the canyon with its deafening cry. Lyra darted away, her swift movements keeping her just out of reach of the T-Rex's snapping jaws. She weaved through the rocky terrain, her agile body moving with precision and purpose. Her goal wasn't to attack, but to lead the predator away from Koro. The T-Rex gave chase, its thunderous footsteps echoing through the canyon. Lyra's mind raced as she calculated her next move. She knew she couldn't keep this up forever. The T-Rex was relentless, and her energy was limited. She needed to outsmart it, to use her environment to her advantage. As she ran, she spotted a fallen tree wedged between two large boulders. The narrow gap beneath the tree was just big enough for her to squeeze through, but too small for the T-Rex. Lyra veered toward the makeshift barrier, her sharp claws digging into the dirt as she slid beneath the tree. The T-Rex roared in frustration, its massive body unable to follow. Lyra didn't stop to catch her breath. She darted around the boulders, weaving through the rocky terrain as she looped back toward the crevice. She had bought herself some time, but she knew it wouldn't last. The T-Rex was already circling around, its predatory instincts driving it to continue the chase. When Lyra reached the crevice, she found Koro huddled in the shadows, his small body trembling with fear. The baby chirped softly as she approached, his wide eyes filled with relief. Lyra nudged him gently, her growl low and reassuring. But their moment of calm was short-lived. The T-Rex's roar echoed through the canyon once more, closer this time. Lyra's heart sank as she realized the predator had found another way around the boulders. They couldn't stay here. She needed to move Koro to safety and fast. She nudged the baby again, urging him to follow her. Koro hesitated, his fear holding him back, but Lyra's determination gave him the courage to move. Together, they darted out of the crevice and into the dense jungle beyond the canyon. The foliage provided some cover, but it also slowed them down. The T-Rex's heavy footsteps grew louder, its massive form crashing through the trees as it pursued them. Lyra pushed herself to move faster, her sharp instincts guiding her through the maze of vegetation. Koro stumbled over a tangle of roots, letting out a frightened chirp as he fell. Lyra stopped immediately, circling back to help him. She nudged him to his feet, her growl firm but encouraging. The baby wobbled unsteadily for a moment before regaining his balance, his small legs scrambling to keep up. As they ran, the jungle opened into a steep slope, its rocky surface leading down to a rushing river below. Lyra paused, her sharp eyes scanning the terrain. The river was their best chance. The water would mask their scent and provide a temporary barrier against the T-Rex. Without hesitation, she led Koro down the slope, her sharp claws gripping the loose rocks for stability. The baby followed closely, his small body slipping and sliding on the uneven ground. When they reached the riverbank, Lyra turned to face the slope, her body coiled and ready for another confrontation. The T-Rex appeared moments later, its massive form looming at the top of the slope. It let out a thunderous roar, its golden eyes locking onto its prey. Lyra growled in response, her sharp teeth bared in defiance. She wasn't going to back down. But then, something unexpected happened. The T-Rex hesitated. Its gaze shifted from Lyra to Koro, its nostrils flaring as it took in the baby's scent. Recognition flickered in its golden eyes, a faint glimmer of something other than hostility. Lyra watched in confusion as the massive predator tilted its head, its body relaxing ever so slightly. Koro chirped softly, his small voice cutting through the tense silence. The baby took a hesitant step forward, his wide eyes filled with curiosity rather than fear. The T-Rex let out a low, rumbling growl, a sound that was neither threatening nor aggressive. It stepped closer, its massive form casting a shadow over the riverbank. Lyra tensed, ready to defend Koro at any cost, but the larger predator didn't attack. Instead, it lowered its massive head, its golden eyes locking onto the baby with a look of unmistakable recognition. Koro chirped again, his small body trembling as he stepped closer. The baby's movements were cautious, but there was a sense of trust in his approach. Lyra watched in stunned silence as the T-Rex nudged Koro gently with its massive snout, a gesture that was almost tender. The baby chirped in response, his fear melting away as he pressed against the larger predator. For a moment, the jungle was silent, the only sound being the rushing water of the river. Lyra's sharp eyes darted between Koro and the T-Rex, her mind racing to make sense of what she was seeing. The larger predator's behavior was unlike anything she had ever encountered. Then, the T-Rex let out a low growl, its gaze shifting to Lyra. There was no hostility in its eyes, only a sense of acknowledgement. It was as if the massive predator understood what Lyra had done, the risks she had taken to protect its offspring. The T-Rex let out one final rumble before turning and disappearing into the jungle, Koro trotting after it with newfound confidence. Lyra watched them go, a strange mix of relief and sadness washing over her. She had spent so long protecting Koro, and now her role was complete. As the jungle grew quiet once more, Lyra turned and disappeared into the shadows, her sharp instincts guiding her back into the wild. She was alone again, but her heart was lighter, filled with the knowledge that she had made a difference. As the dense jungle closed in around her, Lyra felt a mix of exhaustion and triumph. The baby T-Rex, Koro, had been reunited with its guardian, an experience she had never anticipated. Her instincts had always been survival-focused. She fought to eat, ran to live another day, and avoided unnecessary risks. Yet something about Koro had shifted her priorities. Lyra weaved through the underbrush, the ground soft and damp beneath her claws. Her mind replayed the confrontation at the river. The T-Rex's behavior was baffling. Predators as powerful as that beast rarely exhibited such recognition or restraint. But in Koro's presence, it had displayed a protective instinct she didn't expect. As she moved deeper into the jungle, Lyra began to pick up faint, unfamiliar scents. The air carried traces of something metallic and sterile, an odd intrusion into the natural world. She paused, her sharp eyes scanning the dense foliage. The jungle was alive with sounds. The rustle of leaves, the hum of insects, and the distant calls of other creatures. But beneath it all was an unnatural hum, faint but persistent. Curiosity tugged at her, compelling her to move cautiously toward the source of the sound. The jungle thinned out, and soon she found herself standing at the edge of a vast clearing. In the middle of the clearing was a structure unlike anything Lyra had ever seen. Tall, metallic walls shimmered under the sunlight, surrounded by sharp fencing and bright lights that flickered intermittently. Lyra crouched low, her keen eyes studying the area. The structure smelled strongly of humans. She had encountered humans before, small groups of them venturing into the wild with loud, clumsy movements. They were often armed with strange tools, some of which could kill from a distance. She had learned to avoid them, but this place was different. Her gaze swept across the fencing, noticing movement within the enclosure. Large shapes moved slowly behind the metallic barriers, their heavy footsteps echoing faintly. The scent of dinosaurs filled the air, mingling with the unnatural smells of the structure. Lyra crept closer, her lean body blending into the shadows. She moved silently, her claws pressing lightly against the soft earth. As she approached the fence, the shapes inside became clearer. Dinosaurs of various species roamed within the enclosure: Triceratops, ankylosaurs, and even other velociraptors. Her sharp eyes narrowed as she observed the peculiar scene. The dinosaurs inside the enclosure appeared unharmed, but their movements were slow and subdued. She could sense their unease, their instincts dulled by the foreign environment. Suddenly, a loud mechanical whirring sound pierced the air, followed by the heavy clang of metal gates opening. Lyra tensed, her body coiling instinctively as she prepared to flee. But what emerged from the gates froze her in place. Humans clad in strange suits walked out, accompanied by what appeared to be robotic creatures. The machines moved with unsettling precision, their metallic bodies reflecting the sunlight. The humans carried long, cylindrical objects that glowed faintly at one end. Lyra's sharp eyes followed their movements as they approached one of the subdued dinosaurs, a young Triceratops. The humans moved quickly, their actions deliberate and efficient. One of them raised the glowing cylinder, and a soft hum resonated as the Triceratops collapsed to the ground. Lyra's growl rumbled low in her throat as she watched the humans load the unconscious dinosaur onto a metallic platform. The platform lifted into the air, carried by the strange machines, and disappeared into the structure. Lyra's heart raced as she processed what she had just witnessed. The humans were capturing dinosaurs, taking them away for reasons she couldn't comprehend. Her instincts screamed at her to retreat, to leave this place and never look back. But something deeper compelled her to stay. She thought of Koro and the countless other young creatures that could be at risk. This was no ordinary human encampment. It was a threat to her kind and to the delicate balance of the wild. Lyra knew she couldn't face this alone, but she also couldn't ignore what she had seen. She turned and slipped back into the jungle, her sharp claws gripping the earth as she moved swiftly through the underbrush. Her mind raced as she formulated a plan. She needed allies, other predators who could help her disrupt whatever the humans were planning. Her first thought was of the T-Rex, Koro's guardian. If she could reach the larger predator and communicate the danger, it might be willing to help. The T-Rex's strength and size would be invaluable in a confrontation with the humans and their machines. Lyra followed the faint scent trail left by Koro and the T-Rex, her sharp instincts guiding her through the dense jungle. The trail led her to a wide clearing where she found the T-Rex resting beneath the shade of a massive tree. Koro chirped happily at her arrival, trotting over to greet her with excited nips and nudges. The T-Rex raised its massive head, its golden eyes locking onto Lyra. For a moment, the two predators stared at each other, an unspoken understanding passing between them. Lyra growled softly, her body language conveying urgency and determination. She circled the T-Rex, her movements deliberate as she tried to communicate the threat. The T-Rex watched her intently, its sharp instincts picking up on her unease. Koro chirped again, his small voice cutting through the tense silence. Lyra let out a series of short, sharp cries, mimicking the sounds she had heard from the captured dinosaurs. The T-Rex growled low in response, its massive body shifting as it rose to its feet. The air around them grew heavy with tension as the larger predator understood the gravity of the situation. Koro chirped excitedly, his small body darting between Lyra and the T-Rex as if urging them to work together. Lyra growled softly, her sharp eyes meeting the T-Rex's gaze. This was their chance to act, to protect their kind from the growing human threat. With a thunderous roar, the T-Rex turned and began moving toward the human structure, its massive footsteps shaking the ground. Lyra followed closely, her sharp claws digging into the earth as she prepared for the confrontation ahead. Together, they would face the danger and fight for the survival of their world. The T-Rex led the way, its immense frame crashing through the jungle as it moved toward the human structure. Lyra followed closely, her sleek body darting between trees and undergrowth with practiced ease. Koro scampered alongside, chirping eagerly, seemingly unaware of the danger they were about to face. As the group approached the clearing, Lyra could feel the tension radiating from the T-Rex. The predator's muscles rippled with restrained energy, its golden eyes fixed on the metallic structure ahead. Lyra's sharp eyes scanned the clearing, searching for any signs of movement. The faint hum of machinery still hung in the air, mingling with the natural sounds of the jungle. The trio stopped just at the edge of the clearing. Lyra crouched low, her sharp claws digging into the earth as she observed the area. The T-Rex stood tall, its massive head swiveling as it surveyed the structure. Koro chirped softly, his small body trembling with excitement. Lyra growled low, her sharp eyes narrowing as she spotted movement near the metallic fence. A group of humans emerged from the structure, their strange suits glinting in the sunlight. They moved with purpose, carrying the glowing cylinders that Lyra had seen earlier. The T-Rex let out a low, rumbling growl, its massive body tensing as it prepared to charge. Lyra stepped forward, her sleek body blocking the larger predator's path. She growled softly, her sharp eyes meeting the T-Rex's gaze. They needed a plan, a coordinated attack to disrupt the humans and free the captured dinosaurs. Lyra motioned toward the far side of the clearing, her sharp claws carving patterns into the earth. The T-Rex watched her intently, its golden eyes flicking between her and the humans. Koro chirped softly, his small body leaning against Lyra as if to offer support. The plan was simple but risky. Lyra would create a diversion, drawing the humans away from the enclosure. Once the humans were distracted, the T-Rex would use its immense strength to break through the metallic fence and release the dinosaurs inside. It wasn't a perfect plan, but it was their best chance. The T-Rex growled low, its massive head dipping in what Lyra interpreted as agreement. Koro chirped excitedly, his small body bouncing with energy. Lyra took a deep breath, her sharp instincts guiding her as she prepared to act. With a swift burst of movement, Lyra darted out of the jungle and into the clearing. She let out a series of sharp cries, her sleek body weaving through the tall grass as she approached the humans. The group turned at the sound, their strange tools glowing faintly as they raised them in defense. Lyra growled loudly, her sharp eyes fixed on the humans as she circled them. She moved quickly, her sleek body darting between the tall grass and the metallic fence. The humans shouted, their voices echoing through the clearing as they tried to track her movements. The T-Rex watched from the edge of the jungle, its massive body coiled with tension. As the humans focused on Lyra, the larger predator began moving toward the metallic fence. Its powerful legs carried it across the clearing in long, thunderous strides. Lyra let out another series of sharp cries, her sleek body darting closer to the humans. She could see the glowing cylinders in their hands, their faint hum growing louder as the humans prepared to use them. She growled low, her sharp claws digging into the earth as she prepared to evade. The T-Rex reached the fence, its massive head lowering as it examined the metallic barrier. With a deafening roar, the predator lunged forward, its powerful jaws clamping onto the fence. The metallic structure groaned under the pressure, the sharp sound echoing through the clearing. The humans turned at the noise, their shouts growing frantic as they realized the threat. Lyra took advantage of their distraction, darting toward the metallic structure and away from their glowing tools. She growled loudly, her sleek body weaving through the tall grass as she drew the humans further from the fence. The T-Rex roared again, its massive body straining as it pulled against the metallic barrier. The fence buckled under the pressure, its sharp edges twisting and bending as the predator's immense strength overcame it. The captured dinosaurs inside the enclosure stirred, their subdued movements growing more animated as they sensed the opportunity for freedom. Lyra let out a sharp cry, her sleek body darting toward the jungle as the humans gave chase. She moved quickly, her sharp claws digging into the earth as she led the humans away from the clearing. Her sharp eyes scanned the jungle, searching for a safe place to lose them. The T-Rex roared triumphantly as the fence gave way, its massive frame breaking through the metallic barrier. The captured dinosaurs inside the enclosure surged forward, their movements growing more confident as they followed the larger predator's lead. Koro chirped excitedly, his small body darting toward the freed dinosaurs. The young T-Rex let out a happy cry, his small voice cutting through the noise as he joined the group. The larger predator growled low, its massive head turning as it guided the freed dinosaurs toward the safety of the jungle. Lyra stopped at the edge of the jungle, her sharp eyes watching as the humans stumbled through the dense underbrush. She growled low, her sleek body blending into the shadows as she prepared to lose them. The sound of the freed dinosaurs moving through the clearing filled her ears, their heavy footsteps shaking the ground. The T-Rex led the group into the jungle, its massive frame moving with surprising agility through the dense foliage. The freed dinosaurs followed closely, their movements growing more confident as they left the clearing behind. Lyra let out a soft growl, her sharp eyes fixed on the humans as they gave up their pursuit. She turned and slipped into the jungle, her sleek body weaving through the underbrush as she followed the sound of the freed dinosaurs. The group reunited deeper in the jungle, their movements slow and deliberate as they found a safe place to rest. The T-Rex growled low, its massive head dipping as it acknowledged Lyra's efforts. Koro chirped happily, his small body bouncing with energy as he nuzzled against her. Lyra let out a soft growl, her sleek body relaxing as the group settled in. They had faced the threat together, their combined strength overcoming the humans and their strange tools. The jungle was safe once more, its delicate balance preserved by their efforts. As the group rested, Lyra's sharp eyes scanned the dense foliage. She knew the humans wouldn't give up easily, but for now they had won. And in the quiet of the jungle, surrounded by her kind, Lyra felt a sense of belonging she hadn't known before.